Hey folks, welcome to the Coastal Noise Podcast. A few announcements before we begin the interview with Ocean Springs Mayor Shea Dobson. First, Coastal Noise is now on iTunes. We just went up this week and asked sincerely that if you enjoy this show, you want me to interview bigger and better guests, the best way you can help me to do that is to go subscribe to Coastal Noise on the iTunes store. While you're there, please leave a quick review. I'm in a period right now with iTunes where the more people subscribe and review Coastal Noise, it gets bigger exposure, which means more conversations with other incredible guests, both on the local level and the national level. So please, if you want to support the show, go subscribe on iTunes. You can also subscribe on YouTube, or if you have an Android device, the podcast will be up on Google Play later this week, and it is already up on Podcast Addict, which is the podcast app that I use most of the time on my phone. I'll be exploring other apps to submit to in the next few weeks. Again, thank you so much to all of you who have been listening to the show from the beginning, and to all the newer fans. I'm able to continue to do this with your support, and I always do well to keep that in mind. Newest podcast guest later this week, Paul Armentano, is the Deputy Director of NORML, NORML, which is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, organizations in the U.S. for the reform of marijuana laws. We're going to be talking about what NORML is and does, why marijuana was made illegal in the first place, what legal states are showing us now, new science and statistics with marijuana, and what citizens in southern-based states can do to help in the prohibition on marijuana. This is going to be a huge episode for me, and I'm pretty excited about it. Again, if you subscribe to iTunes, YouTube, or any other podcast app, that episode and all the other future episodes I do will go straight to your media device for your listening convenience. Today on the show, we have newly elected mayor of Ocean Springs, Shea Dobson. At age 30, he surprised the city of Ocean Springs by beating out the previous mayor, even though he had never held political office. In this episode, we discussed how he ran his campaign, why he has an emphasis on transparency of office using Facebook Live to broadcast meetings and other social media outlets, expansion in Ocean Springs, goals to keep the city's unique art culture thriving, and toward the halfway mark, we talk about our thoughts on medical marijuana legalization, as he's kind of come out and spoken about that in interviews and shocked a lot of people there, and also his controversial decision to raise the state flag back in front of the city hall. So a really enjoyable conversation. Mayor Dobson was extremely approachable in this interview, and I have good reason to suspect that we will be collaborating with one another in the near future. So let's begin the episode. This is Coastal Noise Podcast, episode number 68. Hope you enjoy it.
So how many episodes have you had?
You're 68.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yep.
What do you so I know you're trying to get big names and stuff, but do you just do like your buddies or anybody?
It started out as proof of concept. So, having friends on, which I'd like to think I've got a decently diverse group of friends, which kind of is what gave me an interest to do this kind of work here.
Yeah.
So I would get, guys that who jived well, lifelong buddies, good chemistry, funny, insightful, and discuss the things that I like to discuss.
People that you want to have a conversation with.
Right. Instead of just the weather and this and that. Speech can be very fleeting and shorthanded in a lot of respects, and I like to deep dive a lot of issues because I think you can think about the deeper aspects of life all you want by yourself, but I think there's something of extra value when you start communicating it with others who are also concerned with those things in life, and it gives you a way to vocalize them and almost broadcast them in a different way. And I think the very act of doing that better reinforces your understanding of whatever that thing is. And then you have another person who receives it and gives you feedback and gives you their thoughts and maybe changes it. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's when you can think about kind of the stuff that you may take for granted sometimes, or not really think of that's in your normal just range of vision that your everyday life, and then kind of chew on a little bit. It's interesting because you can always find a very interesting perspective that, might be beneficial to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've broadcasted pretty well about wanting to have greater transparency in the office.
Yeah.
And you're using Facebook.
Are we going?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
cool.
rolling.
Okay.
You use Facebook Live and platforms like that to better show what you're doing and give people that. And I like that because we're so attached, we're so connected to our devices and everything that a lot of people, they spend a lot of their time on their phone or their computer, and they don't really have time, if they've got a job and that kind of thing, where they're already probably engaged on a telephone or their cell phone, a tablet or a computer, don't access news through television, like basic cable and things like that. So,
Right.
but almost everybody, even now around here, has a phone, has a Facebook, so you can broadcast that kind of thing, and it's an active social community that ideas can circulate around really quickly.
Right.
So
Yeah, and that's I mean, just with our age, too. I mean, most people don't have, or even if they do have traditional cable, they don't really. I watch Hulu, Netflix. I do all this stuff. So we're living in a world where the new generation gets their media and information from non-traditional ways. So why not harness that? I mean, it's 2017. There's no reason why we can't, start using a lot of this. And actually, with the Facebook Live, we're going to continue doing the Facebook Live for our meetings, but we're also looking at getting kind of like a C-SPAN style of camera in the boardroom. Put it on the website. So that's coming, but for now, I'm just doing the Facebook Live, which is I've got a lot of really good feedback on it, so we're going to keep doing it.
Why? Can you tell us why transparency is so important to you, and what methods you're utilizing to facilitate it besides the Facebook stuff? You're doing the C-SPAN thing. Do you have any other ideas of how you want to stay connected with people?
Well, with transparency, I think that's kind of, it seems like politics is so divided right now about, what's conservative, what's liberal. And transparency is just kind of one of those issues. Like, I don't understand how anybody could argue against transparency in government.
Unless you're corrupt or greedy.
Well, yeah. And so for me, it's just kind of a natural progression of, we have this technology, and transparency should be a good thing. So, that's why I wanted to go forward with a lot of this. But yeah, I mean, we're the Facebook Live. I got a Twitter account. I need to start using a little bit more.
I know, right? I don't know why Twitter kind of.
It's just hard. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just this area. Maybe I think they use it a little bit more. And like, actually, the reason I actually got a Twitter was because I was in DC at a conference, and they were talking about effectively using Twitter, and I was like, oh, I don't even have a Twitter, and everybody's looking at me like I was great. You don't have a Twitter? Yeah. And I was like, oh, I guess so I downloaded the app right there in the conference and made an account. But I think it's bigger in like bigger cities. Just around here, it's just Facebook is more of what people use. But
and Instagram, I feel like is pretty. People are pretty plugged into that as well.
Yeah, Instagram as well. So I mean, I'm going to use all of those platforms. Even I try to have a open door policy. If you come by and I'm in a meeting, I can't cut the meeting short or anything like that. But if anybody comes, I try my best to meet with everybody, talk with everybody. So it's I trips to the grocery store is not the same, right. Every time you go in, but I like doing that. I like going and just, I don't want to feel like I'm disconnected to people, Sure. I got a membership to the YMCA, and I'm trying to work out a routine to figure out how often I'm going to go, but I want to just be amongst people. I don't want to think I live like in an ivory tower or anything like that. So if you see me out and you got a question,
which is right, is kind of the way you approached going about trying to win the election, was going out and speaking to people directly.
Right. Yeah.
Which is never going to go away. That's always going to be a huge factor of it. Right.
I believe so. I mean, there's in my opinion, there's no substitute for knocking doors. And kind of, the campaign was kind of, it was, I used social media a lot, and then it was kind of a combination between like the newer social media style and then just old school tried and tested knocking doors. And to me, knocking doors is probably the funnest part about campaigning, even if on days where you might not feel, you're just tired and all that stuff. But once you actually get out, force yourself to get out and knock doors, it's one of the funnest things, because you just get to meet people, and you get to meet people on their own terms where they're comfortable, not like they're coming to a board meeting and speaking in the public or anything like that. Formally. You're meeting them on their front door. And so you can have more of a honest conversation. I've found, not every interaction is going to be great, but, you can have more of a open dialogue knocking doors. And so that's what I appreciate. Just meeting people and kind of learning. And that's how I feel like knocking doors really helps keep me grounded. So, even those candidates that I support, even if it's not my campaign, I'm fine with going knocking doors with them. It's fun. So.
And have you always enjoyed doing that? I know you have a little background in political activity and such. Have you always enjoyed that personal communication?
Yeah, I do. I do. I've knocked doors in Iowa, all throughout that state. Some in Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth area predominantly. Of course, they're all up and down Mississippi. And it's interesting, because what I've noticed is, people talk about liberals and conservatives and all this, but most people are just normal, average, everyday people. I mean, some may be Christian, some may be Buddhist, Hindu. It doesn't matter. But once you actually go talk to them and kind of cut through a lot of that identity politics or rhetoric, I think most people are just want what's best for their family. Want to make sure that crime's not too bad. Just this basic stuff that kind of spans over, conservative or liberal. And so that's what I think is the most beneficial by knocking doors, is just kind of getting to the root of what people, their goals. So, and really that's how I try to approach, of course I have, kind of a political philosophy. However, whenever I discuss issues and politically charged policies or whatever it is, I try to focus on, and this is easier said than done sometimes, but I try to focus on like the goals. It's, whether you agree or disagree with Obamacare, we could talk about that, but what are the goals? If the goal is to get more people healthcare who need it, then let's start there. More affordable healthcare. Let's start there, and both agree that we have the same goals. We just might have a different way of getting there, or we believe a different way to get there. And so I think once you start at principles or goals, you can kind of see. You can proceed with recognizing the humanity in the other person, and not just kind of viewing them as, an asshole Christian or conservative or what it is, or the other, or a snowflake liberal or whatever it is. You recognize that they may have the same goals as you. You just kind of disagree on the process. Yeah,
because there is that underlying human element. I think we get kind of wrapped up in. We get caught up wherever those differences are, and then just immediately label them. But if you can take the time to kind of maybe put that on the back burner because you will just shut a person out immediately if you don't think that they're in the wrong, that they're attached to this other party or organization or ideal.
Right.
And that thing as a whole, you're just totally against. So you make this association that I'm against this individual as well.
Right. So, and like I said, sometimes it's easier said than done. I mean, I think we all kind of, that's human nature, is to kind of have a pack mentality sometimes. So, it's, I'm not saying that I've I've been guilty of it. However, if you try to kind of keep that at and kind of top of mind awareness and recognize when you're doing it, and don't be afraid to apologize or catch yourself and saying, man, I was looking at this in a partisan way when I shouldn't have been. I think I think you have a lot of, I think this country could go a long way if people weren't afraid to say, I was wrong or I messed up. It's okay. Like, we're humans. We can do that. And so, just recognize people's humanity and don't be afraid to recognize your own bias, moving forward.
What made you initially want to run for mayor? What was your thought process there, and what was going on at the time when you first started to seriously consider running?
Well, it kind of all goes back and wraps in, honestly, to the 2016 election for me. Because I was involved with that race, with the 2016 race, and eventually I just got tired of it. I just got tired of seeing how divided and how ridiculous the whole election got, and therefore I'd say probably about 3 months I just washed my hands to the whole thing, and I was done with politics, and that is actually part of why I ended up switching careers and went to the financial industry. And so I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I want to, just get out of politics and do it, go a whole nother direction. And then after the election, I guess I kind of say I just started getting the itch again. But I'd been involved with, locally and I was back in Mississippi. I'd been back for, I don't know, a year and a half or so. And so I was wanting to get more involved locally. And I knew that there was, Ocean Springs has had its issues and such, just like, everywhere does. But so really that's what my focus was. Okay, and I felt like I could be more of my own man locally, because I saw how ridiculous stuff got at the national level and even sometimes at the state level. So, it was just a combination of seeing what was happening locally, and really wanting to focus on, okay, even if I want to be involved with politics more, I don't have to go to the national level, because, a lot of people, that's where they focus on, it's the president and Congress. That's what's sexy and makes all the big headlines about war or, these huge, gotcha headlines, and most people just kind of forget about local, but it's your local officials that affect your everyday lives. So, that's really where I just, it was kind of a shift in gears from focusing on, I still pay attention to national, but I've dialed that back a lot.
Yeah, well, it's that's probably the area that I would say needs the most work overall. And probably this is where to start, is on the local level. I think it's got to be. You got to change. It starts with the individual. It's the singular person. They get a vote. They get a voice.
Right.
Go out there, make it happen. So you start with your local area, which we were talking about Jordan Peterson earlier before we started recording, and he's got this idea of 18-year-olds don't go out and start rallies about the economy. Why don't you stay home and clean your room? Like, you need to be able to, like, if you can't take care of yourself in your own space, like, how are you going to fix everything else?
Yeah.
So to start with the individual, build their knowledge base on whatever it is that's going on, and then try to change your local community, fix what's going on there. The political system, which is smaller, get the people that you want in there to start kind of chipping away. And maybe if you change the infrastructure of all those, then collectively the whole organization as a whole will begin to shift.
Yeah. And I agree. I agree with all that. I think sometimes that, the way kind of the federal government and even the state government has gone, they're involved with a lot of, and do affect some stuff at the local level, or just kind of like your average everyday lives that I personally don't think they should be. But so I can understand where people, they'll feel like, well, I may want it done at the local level, or I may want to get a bit involved locally, but it's almost like it's over their head. So I think that, and it's kind of a balance, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying just ignore national politics, but if you could really make headway and make some noise at the local level, you could be surprised at what you could get done. If you feel motivated to go out and protest against the president or the Congress or a national issue, I mean, please do. You know, I mean, this is the United States, and we have that freedom. However, I think that like I said, a lot of people it's the sexy issues that happen at the national level. But if people would, realize that there's some stuff I wouldn't say most stuff at the local level, it's even more important than what happens nationally. So.
Yeah. And I think, that's a good point. And when we say sexy, it's often what the media is blasting,
right?
To us, and it's almost Hollywood-esque. It's almost like out of a film, and I mean, Donald Trump will change the entire tone and conversation of America in a single day with a tweet,
right?
Like that, which he probably does intentionally to shift things, to throw the collective thought process off track.
Absolutely.
Whether it be on Sessions or transgender people in the military or something ridiculous that happened to him, which, is every day because, the whole friggin' media is
well, he's a reality star. I mean, that's kind of his.
Right. And it's getting crazy to think that folks can get on there. It's like,
and you can be blocked by the president. That's been a whole thing where he's blocking people, and people are trying to take him to court saying they can't do it. And I don't know. I mean,
I don't see where you're going to get that. Seems so whatever. But yeah, it's unknown territory. It's the Wild West. I mean, we're incorporating really social media and people of power and just a viewer base can now, are we gonna see like The Rock and Kanye West and like
you never know. You never know. I mean, because it was a Kid Rock declared he's running for Senate.
Is he?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Yeah,
no,
I'm pretty sure it's in Michigan. But and here's the thing. I've had a lot of people, well, this is just ridiculous. It's almost like, what's that movie? Oh man, what was it? Where it was a time capsule and he goes into the future.
The Hot Tub?
No, it was Idiocracy. Have you know that movie?
I've seen. I came one time, came in halfway through it. It's
pretty good,
like
but
yeah, I was kind of impressed.
But the gist of it is basically, they fast forward I don't know how long to the future, and everybody's just so dumbed down. They have like the president is who is it? Terry Crews, I think is his name, and anyway, it just shows how dumb people have gotten, and there's some people saying, well, we're progressing into that, and I think there's maybe some truth to that to an extent, but I think that in reality that we've seen how ridiculous politics have been for decades and decades, and so for the average person, it's whether we're talking about Obama or Bush or even further back than that, politics has been almost a parody of itself for decades anyway. And so it's not that when we see like Donald Trump being president or Kid Rock running for Senate or The Rock possibly running for president. I mean, he hasn't said anything official yet, but he's put out some feelers, I guess. But what I say is it's no more ridiculous than it has been. It's just that it may be just a little more obvious now. But we all kind of, even if we don't know the details, we all kind of intuitively know that for decades, politics has been decided like kind of in that smoke-filled room type of thing where, there's back doors and, people are just a little bit ridiculous. But now that you have President Trump, who's rough around the edges, it's just, they say in the South, we kind of, sometimes instead of hiding our crazy, we put it out on the front lawn. It doesn't mean we're any more or less crazy. It's just, here it is. And so that's what I find interesting about the people who want to just oh, this is so ridiculous. We have Donald Trump as president and he does all that. It's just because Barack Obama did a lot of the same stuff, overreaching that Trump did. It's just that he had swagger. So don't complain. I mean, it was Barack Obama, who would kill innocent children in the Middle East with flying robots. But as long as he gave a good speech, I guess it's okay. Yeah. So that's, it's that kind of, I'm not interested in hearing how much you dislike Donald Trump because, he tweets or he uses common language when you just got finished sticking up for a guy who flies robots and kills innocent children in the Middle East. But you talk about how nice and presidential he is. That's not presidential.
Yeah.
So,
and it's kind of weird that this one guy would be like the spokesperson for that whole machine that's running, like all the military stuff, all the infrastructure of the entire country being big brother to the rest of the world.
Right.
Like, yeah, this one guy is just, he's responsible for everything. And like, he's got to be the one who like changes it or whatever. And it's like, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the federal government has gotten far too big, but really, it's kind of interesting. And I talked about it before Trump even got elected during the 2016 election, is you would have all these people saying, well, Trump's going to be responsible for the military. He's going to be responsible and have all this authority, to be able to do all this. And I'm saying, well, that's a problem with the structure of government. You can't, what I tell people is when you advocate for government power, you can't just think that your guy is going to be in charge of it the whole time, or your party is going to be in charge of it the whole time. Whenever you advocate for government power, you have to stop and think, am I okay with the other side having this? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then it's probably not a good idea to give the government that power, because it will happen. And so, whether it be George Bush passing the Patriot Act, and then conservatives being happy and liberals being okay. And then when Barack Obama got in office, and it was just the opposite. Mm-hmm. Liberals are okay with it and conservatives are okay, or didn't like it. So that's where I say, okay, stop. You're proving my point. It's not about the players who are in play at the moment. It's about this entire structure of government power and realizing, like, is this a good idea to actually give government? If you trust the individual in there now, you may feel comfortable with that person having it, but they're not going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. So, I think people just need to stop and take a step back and start trusting one another again. I know it sounds cliche, but stop asking government to solve your problems or solve society's problems, and look to your neighbors and your community. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, I think there's something inherently flawed too in the system of just having two sides and they just volley back and forth like that. Mm-hmm. Your side's doing it wrong. Well, now we're in power. Now your side's doing it. And then they just it's just this kind of closed loop.
There's this economist named Peter Schiff who's really good. And one time he made an analogy that really kind of stuck with me. He talked about how the government's almost like a bunch of kids in a chemistry lab, and then they're trying their hardest to find like this perfect combination of chemicals and such that are going to make us all prosperous. But in reality, they're actually going to blow us all up, because government doesn't have this. They don't have the market forces that the private sector does. Mm-hmm. And once you keep adding on responsibility and power to them, they become more and more disconnected to their constituents. And that's why I think that it's best to have more localized power, because it's your local representatives who are easier to contact. I mean, I'm Mayor of Ocean Springs. I'm sitting here talking to you. More than likely, you wouldn't be able to get your congressman or senator or even there's no way you'd be able to get the Donald Trump in here. I mean, it's 2017 and who knows what can happen these days. But
yeah, Mark Maron out of his basement did his podcast with Barack Obama.
Okay, well then I stand corrected. But it's just it's a lot easier to go and speak with your local officials than it is to lobby the White House and the Senate and Congress. So, but anyway, that I just feel like we need to localize more power, because the further it gets from the people, the residents, is, I feel like the more disconnected the leaders become.
Let me ask you, what are some of your biggest goals for the next year or two for Ocean Springs?
Well, we're definitely economic development, infrastructure. We're big on making sure that we grow the eastern end of town towards going out towards Gaucher. We're looking at possible annexation out that way. And so really just expanding that tax base. And I know that sounds kind of from someone who's pretty libertarian like myself, but that we can't just keep pretending that we could keep adding or insisting on all of these services without a growing tax base, because our Ocean Springs lives on sales taxes. And so we have to bring in new industry. And the thing is I've heard a lot about Ocean Springs. We have a very unique identity, and that's why I love Ocean Springs. I'm from Ocean Springs. And so I want to do everything I can to keep that identity in place, because that's who we are. I mean, that's what makes Ocean Springs kind of in my opinion, the gem of the coast. But at the same time, the entire coast is growing, and so we have to grow with it, and we have to figure out a way to grow while keeping our identity. But if we stay stagnant, the cities, that's not good for anybody. So it's that eastern end of town. If we could bring in some more shops, more even whether it be like maybe a PetSmart or something like that, to bring people in. And I've heard some folks say, well, Ocean Springs has kind of like a mom and pop shop community. We have quaint little shops, and that's good, and I love that, and that really is kind of the appeal of Ocean Springs. But that's downtown. I mean, most people, whenever they come and visit Ocean Springs, they come down exit 50, go into downtown, and then they leave. But not everybody shops at kind of the quaint restaurants. I mean, there's a whole market we're missing. Some people want things that are familiar. When you go out of town, you may want to visit kind of the local stuff. Like, okay, for instance, I went to Europe back in 2007, and I loved, trying, man, we'd be in Italy one day. Then we'd be in, Germany, and then in France. And then it was really cool. And you got to experience all this new food and all of these things. But then I remember at one point I was like, man, I just want a cheeseburger from McDonald's or something like, something familiar. And so it's that kind of market. If we have to be able to offer, and I know Ocean Springs has McDonald's and all this stuff, but what I'm saying is that if we could bring some of that new development in on the east end of town, to where really there's not a lot out there as it is anyway. So if we kind of make our city more open to everybody, we have a little bit of everything. We have these quaint shops that you can go and kind of explore and find these amazing new things. I mean, our art in Ocean Springs is second to none, in my opinion. We have a lot of draw that way. But if we could open up our market and bring just even more people into our city, I think it would be good for everybody.
Do you have ideas of what kind of industry you would want to bring in?
Yeah, it's what I'm actually interested in is bringing in. I lived outside of Austin, Texas, for a little while.
Very cool.
And love Austin.
Yeah, great place.
They're really good on bringing kind of the new technology startups, bringing in young entrepreneurs. So that's really where I envision kind of leaning and moving forward is getting these new tech startups and really making it to where it's a community that is kind of ahead of the curve, I guess. So that I'm talking to a investor about putting in some like office type spaces that'll be kind of attractive to the younger generation, and so that's kind of where I envision moving forward is kind of technology based. And I think we're the perfect town to do it.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, Ocean Springs being a very culturally, it has a well-developed art culture. Do you have any plans in that respects to further better that community?
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm interested in doing, and I've spoken with a few people about it. We haven't really set the ball in motion too much, but, for instance, I'd like to put up some murals and such in City Hall. I mean, we're an arts community. That's what we're known for. And then City Hall, you go in and it's kind of, it's kind of boring. Or I mean, we have some paintings and stuff up there, but I'd like to get like just some big murals all over City Hall. I'm interested in putting one in my office. And so, stuff like that, I'm going to go to, and I'm going to go to the Walter Anderson Museum always has events and stuff. I'm going to go and support them. Really whatever they need from me. Our city's pretty strapped for cash, so I don't want to make a promise and say that we could just start donating all of this money. But, outside of that, as far as, where they need me to come and help promote, link up artists with, another museum, or link artists up together, I'll certainly help and be a facilitator in that. And not only that, but, expand kind of when you think of Ocean Springs art, you do think downtown, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying as far as expanding east. We can bring in this new industry, but make it our own. Put some new art out on the east side of town. So there's no reason,
make another hotspot like Government Street.
Yeah, like I said, we can bring in kind of new of these chain or franchises on the east end, but that doesn't mean we have to let it be just cookie cutter and basic. I mean, we could put our own spin on it as Ocean Springs. So yeah, there's a lot of good ideas, and I'm going to lean on the art community to help me kind of flourish those ideas.
You had talked about financing a second ago, and in interviews you've mentioned, your work. You've done work in the adjustment and zoning department.
Yeah, the zoning and adjustments for Ocean Springs.
Okay.
So and that was that was probably like 2014, I think, maybe.
And how did that job help you do what you do now?
Well, really, I got to. It was almost like a kind of a sneak peek into how the city was ran, and I don't want to say that. A lot of times when things would come to the zoning and adjustments, I wouldn't say necessarily that everything was already decided, but the facts would be very clear. I mean, we would look at the ordinance, we would look at ordinances and say, okay, well, the law is this individual has XYZ. It's very clear. Whereas once you start getting up to the planning commission or the board of aldermen, sometimes it's not as clear. So that's, we were way down the totem pole to where it got to us. It was pretty much like, all right, here it is. It's only getting to y'all because, there's kind of a glitch in the system, I guess you could say. Like, and we are really revamping our entire zoning throughout the entire city because it's so outdated. And so just, people will kind of hold tight. We're getting there. There's a lot we have to do in Ocean Springs, but like I said, it just kind of, I saw how Ocean Springs needs some updating and kind of making it to where we streamline a lot of these processes. And I think that's what it showed me the most.
What notes do you take when you look at neighboring cities and you're trying to see what it is that they're doing well that you would consider trying to implement in your city?
Well, Billy Hughes over in Gulfport has done a lot of great stuff. His whole one coast concept. I'm a huge believer in the one coast concept.
Okay.
And so it's basically it's this whole thing, like, we're all of these Ocean Springs, Biloxi, Gulfport, Pascagoula, Long Beach, Moss Point, Gaucher, we're all on the coast, but when people come to the coast, they don't come necessarily just for Biloxi or just for Ocean Springs. They come for the whole package. And so by recognizing that, we could market our own strengths and help really, like I had a buddy who lives in Hattiesburg, and he was down here and he was staying at the in D'Iberville at the Scarlet Pearl. And I knew that. But when I called him, just instinctively, I said, "Hey, are you in town?" And I didn't mean that like, "Are you in town? Are you in Ocean Springs?" I meant that like, "Are you on the coast?" So I think kind of when you kind of view it that way, that's really what I want to kind of, and even go into Jackson County. I'm meeting with all of the mayors in Jackson County, me, Dane Maxwell, Phil Torgeson, and Mario King. We're all meeting once a month. Jackson County mayors. I call it our Jackson County delegation, but we're getting together to share best practices, kind of see what we could work on. Because not only am I big on one coast, but I think Jackson County needs to take a bigger role on the coast, and I want to help. I want to help with the other mayors to do that. And so, just really, and another thing with cruising the coast, I've noticed that's kind of started to be like a really good friendly competition throughout all the cities and on the coast, and it's really fun because now personally I believe that Ocean Springs has the best venue for cruising the coast, but of course Biloxi and Gulfport is a staple as well. Pascagoula is trying to get more folks in there, so it's really cool to have this kind of friendly competition, because I think when Gulfport does well, we all do well. When Pascagoula does well, we all do well. When Ocean Springs does well, we all do well. So really, as far as the other cities and the other mayors, if they need my help to promote their city, their community, I'm all in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way we need to be, is because we are one coast. Mm-hmm. So,
what do you anticipate being some of the bigger challenges of your office?
Oh man, I'm the new mayor. There's 4 out of 7 of our board is new, so there's a lot of new faces, and so really it's just kind of, me being 31, I'm pretty sure I'm the youngest mayor in Ocean Springs history. I'll have to double check that, but so we're going to do a lot of updating, and there's some old habits that are dying. A lot of kind of growing pains is what I've been calling them. A lot of the aldermen coming in have they're businessmen, and they're used to, when they see a problem, they fix it. Mm-hmm. They're not used to having to jump through a bunch of hoops or go through the process. But it is government, and we have to do that. So it's a learning experience as far as making sure everybody knows the proper way to do things. But really, I always like to. I've always kind of seen myself as very diplomatic. I was actually at one time I was interested in pursuing a career with the State Department. And so really this is kind of testing my diplomacy skills between saying, look, and getting everybody and sitting everybody at the table and saying, look, we don't all have to agree on everything, but let's find what we do agree on and work towards that. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why we have to, just throw an entire project in the trash when we maybe agree on 75% of it. Let's get that 75% done and then work out the rest. Mm-hmm. So that I think that's it's getting City Hall, and not just City Hall, but everybody on the same page and working again and coming together for the good of the city. Not that it necessarily wasn't, we have, I'm not trying to say that we have amazing people that work for the city. We have amazing people at City Hall, all of our departments. But it was almost been like everybody's been on their own little island. Mm-hmm. And so I want to do everything I can to help kind of facilitate more communication and more of us working together. So, we could not have to, whether it's planning that may do something and then somebody else comes behind them and is basically working on the same project. If they were more informed about what each other was doing, you could save a lot of time and money that way. So
one of the things that I've been most looking forward to discussing with you is your open-mindedness to considering to re-legalize marijuana, at the very least for medical purposes. Mm-hmm. You've come out and said in interviews that you think there could be potential for therapeutic use at a time when opioids and other drugs that cause overdoses are claiming the lives of 60,000 people annually, probably based on numbers from the CDC and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about your position on that matter in relation to what is going on in the midst of this deadly increase in prescription medication misuse?
Mm-hmm. Well, I firmly believe that medical marijuana would help out a lot of people. There's some folks who will say, well, it could be misused. Well, cheeseburgers can be misused too. Do we want to nerf the world? And that's a Joe Rogan quote that I got from him. But But, I mean, really, and yes, you can misuse. I could sit in front of the PlayStation and waste a whole weekend or a whole work day. At some point you have to give people personal responsibility. But as far as medical, I mean, I think the science is very clear about it, that it'll help folks with seizures, with PTSD, cancer patients, anxiety. There's a whole host of uses for medical marijuana. So,
and we're just beginning to see that again, because it's just now been through this kind of laxation of all the other places in the country, that people are being able to start kind of look and do research, because before you couldn't even, the government would put it on lock, the federal government would put it on lock, and now,
I'm pretty sure it's still a Schedule 1.
It is,
yeah, which is ridiculous,
right?
There's absolutely no justification, and I saw on Facebook the other day, it was Trey Gowdy, which very surprised me, because he's kind of that law and order type Republican who is traditionally against, and he is against legalizing marijuana, but he was grilling, I forgot who exactly he was talking to, but he was talking about how, whenever they scheduled marijuana, Schedule 1, they didn't really have any facts. They just kind of did it because it was that reefer madness propaganda. And really, that's what I feel like most of the marijuana laws are really drug laws in general, but especially marijuana laws, is because just a lot of just hysteria that it has very, very little in fact. And so, but even beyond, whether, I don't care if you think it's the most beneficial magic plant that'll help, open your eyes and help you through life, or you think it's, will drag you down, and wherever you're at on that spectrum, I think that we have to give people freedom of choice. And, the irony is that, I'm a Republican, and I believe that the government needs to stay out of the way of doctors and patients. And really, it's that mentality that kind of is why I believe in medical marijuana. You can't say that you want the government out of my health care, yet you want to keep people from getting treatment. It doesn't, to me, it's not consistent. But as far as the war on drugs, I mean, I think the war on drugs has been a complete failure. I don't know how anybody could really objectively look at it and say that the war on drugs is working.
Because we have decades of statistics now, and it shows that it's not working. Drug use is pretty much the same. We have a bunch of incarcerations.
We spent a lot of money,
costing serious money. And we got to fund police forces for it. Private prisons are profiting off of people going to jail because they need more room. So people have to build prisons to put all the people that, and a lot of those people in those prisons are just for marijuana related.
Yeah, which is insane. There's a really good group called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, LEAP.
Okay.
And one thing that they said, I was listening to one of their speakers, and he said, I forgot who he was talking to, but he was like, why do you think we got rid of alcohol prohibition? And they're like, well, what do you mean? He said, we didn't get rid of it because we wanted to get our kids drunk before school and encourage drunk driving. We got rid of it because it doesn't work. And so I think that that's really where, like I said, regardless of what end of the spectrum, whether you think marijuana is good or bad, you need to stop and say, okay, is this working? And I think that, if you really look at it objectively, you can't say that it's working, because it's not. When we made alcohol illegal, it didn't go away. It just strengthened the mafia. That's what when you make something against the law, it doesn't go away. It just puts it in the black market. So what, and really, if you think that drugs are this bad thing that is terrible and is going to screw up people's lives, that's even more reason for it to be legal, because it'll be above board. Drug dealers don't care. They're not going to check IDs and worry about who's buying the substance that they're selling.
You're not racking in any cash for your city, your schools,
exactly.
your parks, anything like that. Colorado just hit 500 million from 2013 or 14, whatever the year was they went legal. And they used that, like the first 40 million right off the bat. It was written into the thing. Like that 40 mil goes to schools. That's the first thing that gets done.
Right.
And now they're at 500 million.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I think that to me, it's very, very clear that the drug war has been a failure. Even if, as far as legalizing it for recreational, I think even if folks don't want to do that, I think we could say, okay, we can at least look at going towards a more like treatment based, instead of just throwing people in prison for this type of thing. I mean, especially marijuana, they're not hurt. If somebody's sitting on their couch watching Netflix, smoking marijuana, they're not hurting anybody. Ask any police officer whenever they go out to a domestic dispute, are they drunk or are they high? Every time they're high.
You said high.
No, 9 times out of 10 they're drunk.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's alcohol is gonna make you do.
It fuels it, and it makes you drive recklessly. You'll get more ballsy if you drink and then you go driving, and whereas, I mean, if you smoke weed, I mean, I still think that's an issue for sure that we would need to address as far as driving.
Yeah, I mean,
but I would also think that you would probably be driving slower, at the very least,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't advocate, getting high and going and driving, but
yeah,
it's still, it's personal responsibility. I mean, you could be
jazzed up
tired
on Red Bull,
yeah,
or tired.
I mean,
sure.
there's so, again, when it comes to all, just when you go back to all these substances and stuff, yes, you could do just like tools, social media or just firearms or whatever it is. Like, you can use a lot of things for good and you can use a lot of things for bad, and if someone can find some benefit to maybe heal some depression or anxiety or help with, PTSD or something, that's good. Now, will people use drugs and ruin their life? Yeah. People use alcohol and ruin their life. I mean, people eat too much fast food and get to where they can't even fit outside their front door. So
play video games after work for hours on end.
Right.
It's like,
so I think at some point, and this is where I would tell, more of my right leaning friends who would talk about how you could, marijuana could be bad, or, just drugs in general could be bad. I say, well, yeah, but, do you also agree with Bloomberg when he started wanting to regulate how big your Cokes could be in New York? I mean, come on, and I've cut out Cokes. Typically all I drink is sweet tea and water. I mean, and I'm not a big drinker as far as alcohol. I mean, I'll drink beer and watch football, but I cut out Cokes. I typically, I'll have a whiskey and Coke here and there, but for the most part, I don't drink Cokes, and that's because it's not healthy.
right.
But you have people who drink Cokes all day, every day, which is horrible for you, in my opinion. But I don't want a law to prohibit them from doing it. I mean, that's their own personal choice. So I think we need to go back towards that mentality on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think things are greatly shifting in such a way thanks to the internet. And I don't know if you saw the post that WLX put out this past week that I shared it on my thing, but they just asked simply, do you think we should re-legalize marijuana? And it was yes, no, or just medicinal. And
I think I did see that. I didn't look at the
I shared it
results.
on my Facebook and Twitter and such. Like a day later, I went back and it was like 3,000 yes to 150 no. And I went in and I started reading through these comments, and of course the naysayers had some older ideas and mentalities that seem to have stemmed from, it's reasonable stuff. They're kids,
right?
And some people are still a little confused on the crime ratios and things like that. But it was interesting to see how the community reacted to those individuals. And WLOX was going on to the naysayers and commenting on their stuff, suggesting like how their arguments were misconstructed and actually presenting informative information as a news organization in that format. You know,
So it was sound like it was a productive post, huh?
I mean, super. I mean, if you were to get it down to a ratio, that's like 30 out of every 30 people. There's like one person who's like, nah,
Right.
in this area. You know,
Oh, I think people underestimate the support for, at the very least, medical in this state. And I'll give,
and the medical, I'll say, it was like only 350 that people were just medical. 2,600 of them at the time, about 24 hours after the post that I looked at, were just total legalization people. And it's like, wow. And you start looking up at the numbers, and I'm doing a lot of research now because I've got Paul Arminato, Deputy Director of Normal, coming on this week, and just where some of the numbers are now, like CNN did a poll of I want to say 61% of all Americans are totally all out for legalization outright, and different things like that. So we're seeing a huge time, and I feel like, and granted, we are the coast, we're different, out of all of this particular state, we would be considered more liberal than anything, in a conservative sense.
for the most part, I mean, there's areas like in the Delta or Oxford or Jackson. There's pockets, but we
got Hattiesburg and all that stuff. Still, I think if areas and then we've had Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida, they're all making medical moves.
And these aren't overly, I mean, these are conservative states.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I think it'll happen.
Yeah, because if we do it, if the Bible Belt Southern, conservative groups are doing it, I think that's gonna change it all.
I think it'll happen. I mean, at some point, even and like a lot of people will look at this issue as it's a liberal issue, but really I don't. It's, you talk to a lot of conservatives, and a lot of them are coming along the way I kind of with this more libertarian view of it. I don't like it and I wouldn't do it, but more power to somebody else, as long as they don't come on my property and or drive or hurt me with it. I mean, I think that's becoming more and more of the case throughout all of just conservatives in general. So it'll happen.
They're seeing the financial aspects are clicking with them.
Well, and
they're seeing, and and nobody, who is going to disagree with alleviating suffering for people in pain from terrible diseases and on prescription drugs that clinically and scientifically are shown to be more addictive, create more side effects that cause more prescriptions to be added on, versus this plant, which we're now seeing a huge wealth of scientific research being done and observations. And even other places like Israel, I think, is huge into, and of course you got parts of Europe, the Netherlands and things like that are all doing research. Canada is considering full legalization. You've got the place down in South America that just legalized all drugs, and just kind of we're beginning to piece together how it all could work. And I don't know where my train was leaving out of that one, but we're seeing change out of that, you know,
and I think it's also you have to know how to, I guess, for lack of a better word, market it, because, like I said, regardless of if you think it's the greatest thing in the world, even if you think it's bad, there's legalizing is the best thing, even if you think it's bad, because again, it brings it above board. But back to the marketing, you have to have individuals who can talk about it in more of a conservative or libertarian style. I mean, if you have folks going out there saying, in Mississippi, saying, well, we need to legalize medical because it's just the greatest thing in the world, or just for recreational, it's the greatest thing. Marijuana is great, and they kind of they'll. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. You have to have people who others can take serious. You have to have people who are businessmen or respected political leaders to stand up and say, look, I agree with it, or even though I may not personally agree with it, we shouldn't throw people in jail for it, or whatever the case may be. You have to have competent
People
serious leaders, not just
willing
kind
to
of these
step out.
right, not these kind of fringe folks. And I mean, I'm not saying everybody's heart's in the right place, I think, but the kind of quote unquote like typical stoner, if that's all that the public sees, is that the only people pushing for this is somebody who looks like Cheech and Chong, then
go Google famous people who smoke weed. People are going to be blown away, and I think that's part of what's causing the shift.
Right,
your Steve Jobs and your
Michael Phelps,
Richard Branson, Obama, all these different people. It's like.
Yeah, but and that's why recreational. I mean, we could. I think we need to have that discussion as a state. But medical is just. I think that we need to give people treatment. Like I said, regardless of if you don't want people using it recreational. I think that I don't understand where the controversy is to just say, okay, we could talk about recreational or all that, but let's at least give people treatment. Let's at least give medicine to sick people. That to me, get government out of it. That to me is a very, very reasonable position. Mm-hmm. But it'll happen. I think it'll happen eventually.
Okay. So. And I want to ask you personally, what can we do? What can you do? What can we do, or the people, to make? Do you think we could do to kind of start that conversation or to push politically for something to happen in that direction? Would you have any advice on that?
Really, yeah. But back to, like I said, you have to put competent, professional people at the head of it. A lot of conservatives, even if they are kind of open to it, mm-hmm. if they see that if they kind of are, or if they feel like, just from kind of how it's being presented, that it's just kind of like a way to get your foot in the door to kind of make Mississippi this, pothead nation where there's going to be weed stores on every corner. I don't think people want that, but I don't think that would be the case, mm-hmm. And so that's why you need professionals who are respected. I think you even need some folks who are against marijuana personally, who don't want to, who think that it's bad, but saying, look, it's not good, but the way we've been approaching it is totally wrong. And mm-hmm. so I think once you start doing that and stop making it look so fringe and frankly, sometimes kind of silly, mm-hmm. That I think you're going to get a lot of headway on that when it comes to more of the conservatives. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the conservatives are right there on the line. It's just letting them know, like, okay, it's okay. It's not like it's just going to be, you're going to walk outside and it's going to be a huge cloud of marijuana smoke. It's not going to be like what you're thinking. Yeah, because already the numbers are almost the same, right? If you look at a lot of other states, the use is kind of the same. It's just like those people, you get the tourists that come through for like that very reason. Mm-hmm. Colorado got huge. I think that's starting to traffic. I think that's starting to die out though, because Colorado was the first, and so it was like hot and exciting. Now you've got all these other places, which if states and equal areas can benefit from the financial aspect of that stuff, I mean, I would really consider Mississippi as a whole to really consider that in terms of, do we want to be last to that again just because mm-hmm. we're nervous and we're not sure, that we need to take a look at that? Because, I mean, I would imagine that a subtropical climate could produce all year round if that became like a viable industry for us. Mm-hmm. And, we've got the history of the federal government grow op that is at Ole Miss that's been mm-hmm. around since like the 70s or 60s, whatever. So we have some interesting history here with it in that regards. And I just think that a lot could probably be gained if we would get on that train and mm-hmm. start to figure out how to navigate those waters the way we want to do it, the way we feel comfortable expanding upon it. Right. But if you're going to wait around for everybody else to do it, then, well, the market's already going to be taken up. People aren't going to go. Yeah. Let's go to Mississippi. Let's go get Mississippi marijuana. Yeah. It's like, well, it's already everywhere now. Yeah, you can just go down the street or wherever you live. Yeah, Amazon's going to ship it to you. Yeah, with their drones. With their drones. Yeah. And I agree. We definitely want to. I think we need it done sooner rather than later. Mm-hmm. However, I think my goal as far as with or I wouldn't say goal, but with medical, even if we are last or it's not like something that's going to give our state a lot of money back. For me, I just want people who are sick to be able to get treatment. I mean, even if not a dime goes into taxes, which it will, but even if it didn't, just the ability of people to be able to treat themselves. I mean, that to me is
the humane aspect.
The humanity. Just let people choose what they feel is best for their life and for their health. I mean, I don't understand why that is a controversial position.
Right.
But we'll get there.
Yeah.
It'll happen.
On the subject of controversial topics, a lot of people have taken a notice to you putting up the state flag back up in front of City Hall. What was your thought process to that? What brought you to that decision? Well,
really it was, and I keep saying it's really as simple as that's our state flag, and I think we should fly it. We are a city inside Mississippi. We receive money from Jackson. We receive money from the federal government. We receive money from the county. So, I'm very proud to be from the United States, very, very proud. And I'm very proud to be from Mississippi. And so for me, it's flying the flag of a state that I'm proud of. It's flying the flag of the state that we're in, and that we're one with Mississippi. And like I said, we get money from Jackson. We need to fly the flag. As far as what's the design of the flag, the Confederate symbol, that wasn't on my, I was aware of there would be some people who were upset. I was aware. I was very clear. But there was people who were upset that it was down. The only difference is they weren't as vocal. I had plenty of people ask me, how do you feel about the flag? Are you going to put it up? Are you going to leave it down? And I say, well, it is the flag of Mississippi, so it should be up. Simple as that. And then the conversation moved on. So for me, it's just, like I said, it's our state flag. And if I was a mayor in California, I would put up the flag of California.
Do you think more people want it up than they do want it down?
I don't know. I will say, yeah, I do think more people want it up than down. Even some folks who think that it should be changed still want it up, because I think changing the flag and flying the flag are two separate issues. I've had a lot of people who say, look, even if it came to a vote, I would vote to change it. I think that
why don't we though? I mean,
why don't we put it to another vote?
Yeah.
Oh, I think we should.
We've done it a couple times, right? I think I researched it a little bit.
2001 was the last one.
Okay.
And you and I weren't even old enough to vote at that time. So I do think that our generation needs to be able to weigh in on this issue, because, and I've heard some folks say, well, are we just going to vote on it every 10 years or so? Well, hopefully not. But I think this country has changed a lot from 2001 to 2017.
Oh yeah.
We've had, I can't remember what month the vote was taken, but living in post 9/11,
Katrina's right around the corner.
Yeah, Katrina's right around the corner. First black president. It just society and social media kind of being wrapped up in everyday life. So society has changed so much that I think that there needs to be a new vote. Whichever way that vote goes, I'm going to fly the flag that comes out of it, whether it's the same thing or if it's different. Because again, that would be the state flag of Mississippi, and I'm proud to be from Mississippi, and I'm going to fly the flag. But as far as to those who do want to take it down, I understand, they say, well, it's offensive, and I'm not necessarily disputing that perspective, because ultimately the flag is a symbol. And so in college, I studied religion. I studied political science and religion, the two things you're not supposed to talk about. So, and one thing you learn about in religion is that symbolism is very, very, you can't dictate to people how they relate to a symbol. You go and you ask, if you were able to pluck out somebody from biblical times and say, what does the cross mean to you? They're gonna it's gonna mean a lot different to them to what it means to people today. Because that, I mean, let's face it, the cross
It's an execution.
That was execution, right? They didn't look at it like we look at it today. So symbols can change. They can you know, it's all depends on the eye of the beholder, I guess. So I think it's wrong when people on both sides, when people try to say, well, no, it's your perspective is wrong. You know, it has nothing to do with hate, or whether they say it has everything to do with hate. It's not your decision how somebody perceives something or relates to somebody. You can't, and that's where there's basically no right answer when it comes to symbolism. So I do understand where both sides are coming from. However, you know, the United States flag flew over internment camps of Japanese Americans, you know, so Japanese Americans can say, well, the American flag is oppressive to me. I mean, that flew over the camps of my ancestors who the United States government put in jail because they were Japanese, you know, the Native Americans. You know, I mean, we don't even have to go into everything that the federal government did to Native Americans, and that was all under the United States flag. So, you know, every flag, or I guess most flag, I don't know, technically everyone, but there's a lot of controversy wrapped up in flags and symbolism. If we vote to change it, we vote to change it. However, if we are in agreement that our country or our city needs a flag, then it needs to be flown. So if those who advocate taking it down, that's where I would go to them and say, look, okay, do you want to take the American flag down too? I mean, how far does this go? And if you don't want to take the American flag down, okay, well, do you not care about Japanese Americans and what they had to go through and the hurt that the American flag flew above their internment camps that they had, that their family went into? So, you know, I don't, it's almost like it's a selective outrage at times.
If you felt that there were more people that wanted it down, if you had like some sort of poll or something like that, and most people, we'd rather it down, would you consider taking it down at that point?
You know, I would consider, I mean, if there was a poll that only Ocean Springs residents could get to, and I mean, I guess that would be something to think about. However, I honestly don't feel like that would be the case. And here's the thing is, I've had a lot of people who are against me putting it up will say, well, aren't you, look at all these people who are upset with it being down. You know, we're seeing all this on the news media. We're seeing all these folks flooding Facebook or coming to your meetings and demanding that we take it back down. Well, I would even say I've had more people congratulate me and tell me thank you. I've had people from who aren't even from the coast say that they love coming to the coast, and they're going to make a conscious effort to come to Ocean Springs specifically and spend money because I put the flag up. Now, I guess I'm publicizing it now on the podcast, but I'm not going on Facebook and bragging about that, most of them aren't going on and making a huge deal about it and trying to get on the media. So I think that what we need to realize is just because you're loud and vocal doesn't mean that you should get your way. I mean, I could go outside with a megaphone and get some people to take some videos of me, but that doesn't mean that I'm right or that I what I'm demanding should happen. So, if that theoretical poll should happen, it'd be something to consider. But I honestly
seems like changing it. It seems like changing it would be the best of the options. How how do we get that to that ball in motion there?
Well, you can go about. And I'm still not 100% on. I've heard arguments that it's a Mississippi constitutional issue to where the legislature has to vote on it. I don't think that the legislature should vote on it. I think that it should go straight to the people on the ballot, because I don't think that this is it's not a policy like, taxes or schools or something like that. This is a flag. This is a symbol. So and it represents the people. So I think that's where it should be. The legislature shouldn't vote on it. It should go straight to the people. And some people say, well, it is a policy decision because it affects our tax dollars because people may or may not want to come here because of it. Well, yeah, that may be true, but people may want to come or not come to our state because of the music or whatever the case may be. So you can't say that every little thing that may or may not attract people to our state is a public policy concern that the legislature should have its hand with. If you'd start doing that, I mean, you could argue that literally everything could be up for a vote. So I don't think that's the answer, but yeah. So basically, what you would have to do is, and there's groups out there if you want to Google them, but I don't know if there's any active ones. I know there has been, but basically, you just collect a certain amount of signatures. I'm not sure what that number is, and once you hit that mark, it goes on the ballot. And I think I'm pretty sure what it has to do is there has to be a certain amount within each congressional district. Like you can't just like load up like a ton of signatures in District 2 and then none come from District 3 or whatever the case. So it has to be a certain amount, but more specifically, it has to be a certain amount within each district, congressional district. And we have 4 in Mississippi. So, it's very doable, but if that's what they want to do, then put it to a vote and let's see what happens.
Okay. I got 2 or 3 more questions for you here. This one's going to be kind of a broader one in a sense, and we've kind of dabbled and talked about different aspects of this next question. But what are your thoughts for important infrastructure principles for Ocean Springs? Generally speaking, what kind of plans do you have for 3 hot ones would be maybe like schools, parks, and roadways?
So we've looked at, I think our school system is amazing. So I want to do everything we can to support and promote our schools. I think Ocean Springs Schools is, I went to Ocean Springs Schools and I feel like I'm very blessed for it. So I think our schools are pretty, every school could use some work, but I'm confident in our schools. But outside of that, there's certain, we're looking at plans to put more biking paths throughout Ocean Springs. I've heard a lot of that in the community. For instance, Holcomb, we're looking at putting one down Holcomb, Halstead, a couple other, we're working out the details, but I'm really interested in making sure people can making our community more walkable, more, bikeable. So anything like that. And especially it goes back to the fact that I'm trying to bring in more young entrepreneurs and technology and all this stuff. And really that's where kind of a lot of them, people our age, it's very common in bigger cities to see millennials riding their bicycle to work, with their ties on. Yep. So stuff like that, making it easier for this market to get to work and to live in our community in a way that I think that our community is really going in the first place. Because like I said, I've had a lot of people asking about the biking paths, but we have a lot of infrastructure issues, especially because it's been raining. It's been raining so much lately. It's a lot of like sinkholes and stuff have popped up. So we're working on that, and that's what I tell people: just hang tight. They got if they see something pop up, call Public Works, and we'll get to it. Just be patient with us. As far as parks go, we're looking at we're really interested in getting a dog park in Ocean Springs. Myself and a lot of the aldermen have talked about it, and we're looking at different options. As far as location goes, so I'd really like to see a dog park. We have great parks in Ocean Springs, so and our parks director is amazing, and everybody at within all of our departments. But as far as parks goes, I mean, they keep them looking nice. Mm-hmm. So I'm confident with the way our parks go. But yeah, adding a dog park would definitely go a long way, because I got a lot of that during the campaign.
Yeah. Got a dog community in Ocean Springs.
Oh yeah. And I'm a big dog person myself, so I'll probably go utilize it as well. And really, I mean, Ocean Springs is very pet friendly anyway. There's a lot of bars and such you can go to and bring your dog and kind of sit outside on the porch or something like that. So, but so the market's there.
Yeah,
it's just finding the money to do it, which is always the trouble.
To kind of wrap things up here, if you could broadcast, say, like a regular PSA or have a billboard that every Ocean Springs citizen could hear or read on a daily basis, what kind of message or request would you give them if you were trying to better your city through the people directly?
That's an interesting question. I think that it would be to, like I said, I'm big on transparency, and so, but also what goes into that is, I'm going to inform people about what's going on in the city, and I think the aldermen are committed to that too, to letting people know, what we're voting on and what's going on with the community. And so, what I would say is, what comes along with a lot of transparency and a lot of information being thrown out with you, is to be diplomatic and be respectable of people, because whenever you put information out, I want to have more town halls, and really open up dialogue within the community. But what comes along with that is being able to just agree to disagree. Look at policies and look at the situations, and even if you don't agree with it, just at least give your opponents the benefit of the doubt that they have the best interest of their constituents or the residents or the community as a whole in mind. Because really, I think that's kind of this toxic politics in this country has we've gotten too much into that to where, people, it's like we talked about the other, people just want to vilify everybody. So, just work with us. Work with everybody in your community, because there's a lot of new faces at City Hall. There's a lot of, the leadership has changed. There's a lot of new energy, and not everybody's excited about it. I mean, some people, people who didn't vote for me or may not like something that I did, maybe a little nervous about it. So, open up dialogue, and just at the very least give people the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to do the right thing. I think that's kind of where how I approach things in my life, and it's so much easier and less stressful going through life, assuming people are good rather than out to get you all the time. Yeah. Sometimes it's not always the case, but I think that's a better way to approach situations.
All right, Mayor Dobson, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah. Let's do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, no question. Yeah, I've been. This is my first podcast, so I've been
really.
So like I said, I've been interested in possibly starting my own, and so I hope to.
Yeah, you start thinking about starting your own, and your actual podcast listener. So that's really cool. I think this is a new format of media that's definitely changing the dialogue and changing the way people think in general.
No doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool to have the mayor of Ocean Springs running his own podcast.
Let's do it. Maybe you can help me set some stuff
up.
Oh,
absolutely, man. Other people, Robbie D'Angelo and Melissa Mott and Beth O'Neill, lots of people, they come through and they're actually making it happen, Yeah. And in a lot of respects, they've helped me kind of grow as well. So it's kind of cool to see a network finally kind of developing, So, cool. Yeah, man, anything you need, let me know.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Appreciate everything having me on.
Yep. All right, folks, we'll catch you back next time. Paul Armentano from Normal is going to be on calling this week. Subscribe to the Coastal Noise Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, and other podcast applications. I'm still in process of getting different uploads to different distributors, but I'm sure if you go and check out, it'll be there or will be there in the near future. So I appreciate everybody joining in on the conversation. So we'll see you next time.
All right.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. That was fun.
Yeah.